Hi, everyone. We'll start our webinar with Professor Alon Chen, President of the Weizmann Institute of Science, in just a couple of minutes. We'll let all of you who don't come to class on time, but a little bit late, we'll give you another minute or so, because we understand it takes time. It took me a while today, and it's still actually getting my camera ready. Yeah, and taking my hair out of the bun, that we all have for months and months now. How are you doing today, Professor Chen?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you everyone for taking the time and joining us. Looking forward.
Yeah, we'll just wait for a cue from John where we have a good amount already online and we can start.
Sure.
Hello from Mexico. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, we actually, I'll say it again in my introduction, but we have so many people who signed up and registered and are so interested in hearing what you're doing and what the Institute is doing here from Miami, Florida. Yeah, Canada. I wonder, I'm waiting for the West Coast. I'm waiting for the West Coast to write us.
Fantastic.
John, should we? Do we have, can we start? Here, no, John said 2 more minutes. Okay.
Okay, let's wait.
We'll wait. You're working at 50% like we are, or?
Not really. It's really depend. Meaning we have to keep the social distancing, of course, working with masks and everything. But currently, as much as we can let people work from home, if they can work from home, they will. But we're not working in capsules. Meaning it's not 50-50. It's really depend on whether it's students or postdocs or scientists or technicians. It's really depend on the role. But we're working almost full capacity now.
Yeah, we're following. But I'm assuming, and this is right before we start though, that because there are a lot of laboratories and probably dangerous chemicals as well, that you guys do have probably protective gear and masks also on a regular basis, not just for COVID-19.
Yeah, totally. Meaning, especially people working on preclinical research, usually with the research animal, are used to wear masks. Meaning, the last 20 years working in science, I'm used to work with these masks for 12 hours per day. So for me and for us, it's not anymore. When I used to be in work in the lab, so we definitely already equipped with such protection gear before the pandemic started. Definitely.
We're going to ask you a lot more questions about this, but let me now formally open the event. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning, this early afternoon, this evening, depends where you are. We have one of our biggest turnout ever for the webinar, and I think it just proves and shows that people around the world are as curious and as excited as we are here at the embassy, and I am, to hear from Professor Alon Chen, President of the Weizmann Institute of Science, about the Weizmann Institute of Science, of course, and especially during these times, these unusual, unprecedented times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Professor Chen, before he became president of Weizmann in 2019, he's a neuroscientist. He was the managing director of the Max Planck Institute of Psychiatry in Munich, Germany, and he headed the Weizmann Institute Laboratory for Experimental Neuropsychiatry. He was born in Israel, and he studied in Ben Gurion University in the Negev, which we hosted and learned about a few weeks ago. So I think it's so fitting and fits in very nicely that now we hear, I think, of one of their probably most celebrated alumni, and we have him here with us. And as I said, we're excited, and we'll learn a little more about the Institute, the groundbreaking research that they're doing on a usual basis, and especially now around the pandemic that we're all suffering from. And we'd like to hear a bit about the innovative research and also take the time to learn about Professor Chen, the road that led him up to this prestigious post, and his studies and the different scholarships and how he actually managed to get where he were, including Fulbright and other corporations. So let me just, delve right in if it's okay, Professor Chen. Thank you so much for being with us.
Sure. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for the kind introduction, and shalom, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending where are you on the globe. Thank you for taking the time and joining us, and looking forward. Let's start, Tammy.
Please. So just before, here we have neuroscientists on, okay, but we have to keep it, let's start slowly.
And
right?
I know this neuroscientist even personally, so thanks for joining, Jaime. I'm also seeing the chat, so it's nice. I will try not to look to the right.
You can, I know we're very much for free flow, but let's start please like with a 101 introductory level question for the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about the Weizmann Institute for Science? It's not a regular university. It's a very, I think, interesting center in Israel and in the world in general. So just let us know, in a few sentences, what you do, what your main objectives are, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the Weizmann Institute is a research institute. As you mentioned, it's not a university, meaning we don't have a bachelor students. We have only research students, master, PhD, and postdoctoral fellows. We are focusing on the different fields of natural and exact sciences, meaning biology, all the biomedical research field, physics, mathematics and computer science, and chemistry. It's a world-leading research institute. It's around 4,000 people, students, postdoc, technicians, and doing very exciting science. We're going to talk later, probably today, about our philosophy and how we approach science. But very briefly, it's a curiosity-based research institution, which is all about academic freedom, giving our scientists just the freedom to explore. And I think definitely in Israel, everyone is familiar with the Weizmann. Worldwide, the scientific community is well familiar with the Weizmann. And my goal is that also the public, many of you that join us today will know what the Weizmann Institute is.
You said it's curiosity driven. It's also called, I think, fundamental research that Weizmann is doing, which is not. How does it come about? I guess you're not a company. You're not interested in the outcome. You're not driven by the outcome, but you're driven by, I guess, academic curiosity. Can you tell us a little bit about the philosophy, and then was it useful? Did it lay the groundwork for dealing or finding research to deal with this pandemic?
So indeed, the Weizmann is what we call a basic research institute, or dealing with fundamental science, meaning we care about mechanism. As me as a neuroscientist, I care how the brain function, rather than go directly on my approach is to find solution for Alzheimer's. Doesn't mean we don't care about finding solution, but we care about understanding the basic or fundamental aspects of us, of the human being, of the universe, and which eventually will lead also to findings which will benefit all of us, or benefit humanity. Our philosophy, as I already mentioned, is in a way unique, because we invest a lot of effort in trying to recruit the most outstanding scientists from around the world. And when we identify them and recruit them, we provide them with the best infrastructure, the best tools, and in order to allow them to lead their field of research around the world. Since we are not university, we are not looking for covering specific topic of interest. The only criteria would be excellence, meaning if we have someone working on the green lizard of the Amazon, we're going to recruit, if this scientist, he or she, are the best scientists in the world studying the green lizard of the Amazon, this is the person we would like to recruit, and of course provide them with the best possible infrastructure to be the most competitive worldwide in this specific field. So when you ask how this structure or this philosophy allow our scientists to be more maybe engaged with COVID-19 research. And this is something I spent quite a lot of time thinking of. Overall, we have more than 65 research groups currently on campus studying COVID-19, which is 25% of all our research group. The Weizmann have 250 research groups on campus from the different fields, and 25% of them in a matter of days to weeks started working on COVID-19, which is quite a large number. I mean, I spoke with my colleagues around the world. I don't think other institution, 25% of the research shifted, especially as we consider as being a basic or fundamental research institute. And I think this is somehow relate in the way we relate to our philosophy, the way we think about how to conduct science, and the fact that our scientists are used to this freedom. This, I think they'll eventually become more flexible, even more agile to make this transition, meaning they recognize the need, this medical need, this need from the public for finding solution, and they just decided to shift their science or part of their science during this period toward the research of COVID-19. Yeah, I think this is probably
can you give us
the recipe. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, can you give us an example of a lab? How, like if somebody was studying, I don't know, Legionnaire's disease, they put aside, that virus and brought in, how does it work?
Now, it's even more extreme. So when you talk about these 65 or now even 66 labs doing COVID-19, large number of them are not even from the biomedical field. We have people from the faculty of physics, or people from computer or mathematics or computer science to start working. Let's get one of the extreme examples, Professor Eran Segal from the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science. Eran is doing many different projects, extremely talented professor, but in the COVID-19, he decided to monitor the spread of the virus, whether he can develop tools, mathematical tools, algorithm that can follow better or predict the spread of the virus. And he used those, and I'm oversimplifying, but he used those questionnaires that we have now more than 3 million people around Israel filling those questionnaires. And he developed those tools that allow him to predict where the virus, how the virus is spreading, where the hub of infection around the country. And it was extremely helpful to the policymaker, to the Minister of Health, and to predict even 3 or 4 days in advance where the next outbreak gonna take place. And these algorithms are currently used by, I think, around 10 or 11 other countries around the world. Of course, he never worked on on viruses at all. Actually, out of those 66 labs, only a single lab worked on lethal viruses before.
Lethal viruses, John, not COVID. No, I mean, I know it was a flu pandemic, so not.
Yeah, no. He actually, his name is Ron Diskin, and he actually worked on Ebola and HIV related, but he was a person who worked on viruses before. The rest didn't ever really worked on viruses.
That's amazing. And just, you mentioned the Ministry of Health, and we keep saying, Israel is a good lab because everything is so small and close by that a research institute can speak to the ministry, can, perhaps speak to the military or the army that's taking part of it now, look at the citizens. Do you feel it happening? Do you have actually a dialogue with either other institutions or with different groups that are relevant? Do you see this cooperation happening on the ground now?
Oh, definitely. We have, major cooperation, definitely with the government in early stages. I don't know whether it's because we're a small country or because the Weizmann is considered as a place who can, his opinion, his knowledge and ability to provide solution is well known. So we have ongoing dialogue with the different bodies. We have a strong cooperation with the Army, with the IDF, with the Israel Defense Force and we work together to develop tests which are faster and quicker and more accurate to COVID-19. And in general, I think it's a beautiful era for science because, usually science is relatively competitive and everyone wants to get this finding first or the vaccine first or the finding or isolate this molecule first. And something happened during these months that everything is much more open, collegial. People are sharing the information and this is saving a lot of time. Many of the projects we do on campus, and not only us, around the world around COVID-19 is open access. People are sharing the knowledge, sharing the material, sharing the reagent. And this is what is really allow us to get major progress faster.
So you benefit. So you benefit from your own research, but then can use the data that you get from other research institutions. So let me. I wasn't planning to ask, but but I think Weizmann, and you mentioned it right in the beginning. You said that Weizmann collects the best or most excellent minds from around the world and brings it to Israel. Can you tell us a bit more in depth how it works and how does, especially now in the times of COVID-19, how Weizmann is able, again, you said only 4,000 people, staff, and everybody on campus in a small country. How does Weizmann, how work in this and actually give itself a name and become an expert where people turn to it and know about you in Israel and worldwide? A little bit in general, if you can, and also now in times of Corona.
Of course. So the Weizmann is very international institution, So the formal language of the daily language is English. Of course, all the seminars, the research, the lab, the presentation, everything is done in English. Now we have the majority of the postdoctoral fellows at the Weizmann are foreigners. We have students and postdoc coming from 40 different countries. So it's a very international campus. It's well known within the field. So if someone would like to eventually work in leading research institution worldwide, even if it's not Israeli, even if it's not Jewish, can apply. Of course, we open and we even encourage this diversity. And this is something that, regardless to this question, I think it's extremely important, okay? Because, diversity, bringing people coming from different cultures, different way of education, those people also think differently or behave differently or think science differently. So it's very important to have them. The Weizmann is a community and it's relatively not a very big place since we are not university. 4,000 if you compare it to other institutions. I don't think it's relatively, it's very intimate. And we have this, now you need to visit campus and I invite all of you to come and visit because we like to call it the Weizmann family or the Weizmann community. It's a gated, beautiful green place that, you can breathe the science when you visit here. And it's also very interdisciplinary. We don't really have borders. I said we have physics and chemistry and biology, but we don't really have a clear borders now. Many of the most interesting science is done within the borders. People who were trained in physics, but asking biological questions. People, trained in chemistry, but working in computer science and vice versa. So this is something that also created this quality. So it's a combination of the people, of the community and the atmosphere. We like to call it, a country within a country. It's a small country inside, the majority of the scientists live on campus. We have the daycares here on campus supporting our scientists, the housing, the swimming pool, the gym. It's a beautiful place to do science, both in the quality and the atmosphere.
So just a personal question about that. How is this family, how is the life on campus going on during the times of Corona? Because here in the US, many campuses totally shut down, send everybody home. Also, in Israel, the universities are deliberating and are trying to figure out what will happen come September. Can you tell us a little bit about how your scientists, and I didn't even know that, it sounds more like a UN within a country. And not because how are you dealing with it as a president? How are you managing on a personal, human resources issue, the coronavirus?
So initially, of course, we always follow the guidelines of the government. And in initial stages in the first wave of the COVID-19, we we had to reduce the number of people on campus, and we had to run the research and the other activities in around 30%. So many people had to stay home. But already, I think it was late April, we already came back working in full capacity. We, of course, it's relatively easy to manage or control because it's a gated place. It's a community. Everyone who enter the campus go through a gate. So we measure fever in the entrance. People have to wear masks, and we keep the social distancing. So it's well managed. Again, we have also families who live on campus, which are the scientist families, and so it's a bit of a combination of science and daily routine, but it's managed very well. And the first wave, we didn't have even a single positive case on campus.
Wow.
During the second wave, which was significantly higher, we did have few cases. No one with the severe symptoms, but everything is managed properly. Referring to our previous question related to how we keep this international atmosphere despite of the pandemic. So it was definitely a challenging period, meaning we did, or actually do still have few of our students and postdoc, still stuck at home, either abroad or here, due to the problem with the flights. And in the last few weeks, we managed, I think, to bring most of them already, especially the postdoctoral fellows, and now starting with the PhD. We had to rearrange one of our dormitories here to as a quarantine. We have, I think, 25 rooms which we provide as quarantine. We bring those students and postdocs, they stay here. We provide 3 meals per day, and then after 2 weeks, they can start working in the lab. Of course, again, it's very challenging, but we do everything in order not to affect or stop research.
Yeah, especially as you've mentioned, the 65 labs or a quarter of your labs working on corona, and you gave us some examples, but may I ask you specifically about a vaccine or a possible treatment for corona? We heard some people say that even maybe by December of 2020, I heard Dr. Salmon from the Ministry of Health yesterday say, maybe not December, but maybe the spring of 2021. Can you give us a little bit of insight or share with us what's happening in your labs about this, as much as you can let us know?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I mentioned, we have many projects, but they're all divided into 3 main categories. One will be more related to diagnostics, meaning we have labs which developed or still developing techniques which will allow safer, quicker, more accurate diagnostics of the virus. The lab of Professor Eran Elinav and Professor Ido Amit, they developed a sequencing-based approach for COVID-19, which allow us to do the test in a much safer way because the virus is inactive when it's collected. They can do tens of thousands of tests per day, and it's extremely accurate because it's a sequencing based. It's not based on PCR, but on sequencing, so we can really distinguish from the virus.
Sequencing the genome,
the RNA of the virus itself.
The
RNA in this case of the virus itself. And this has been already even published, and it's available for the community. We have other labs, such as the lab of Professor Noam Sobel, working using the olfactory system of sniffing now to develop tests extremely quick tests for identifying the virus. But I think and then there's other category of people who do monitoring, and I already mentioned Eran Segal, but there's many labs, several labs mainly from mathematics and computer science, developing different algorithms and approach and models, mathematical models to predict the spread or to develop the best exit strategy, how to behave, not to do what Israel did on the second, preventing the second wave. Maybe if the exit strategy was a bit different, it would not it would be better. But I think still the biggest category of research around COVID-19 is people which are developing either molecules or vaccines or antibodies against COVID-19. I can mention maybe one or two. We have the lab of near London and the lab of Ron Diskin. They're both working on developing molecules, small molecule, either can play as either as a decoy, as a trap, or as an inhibitor for critical proteins or enzyme within the virus that will prevent him from infecting our cells, or even inhibiting the proliferation of the virus within our cells after it's already infected us. So these are molecules. This could be a treatment either to prevent the infection or to prevent the disease itself. We have other labs, such as the lab of Professor Sarel Fleischman, which is developing those let's call it nanobodies, which are small artificial antibodies that can mimic some aspect of the antibodies developed by human or people who recover from the corona and try to mimic them in lab conditions. So many more. So it's very different approach used by different labs. Some of them use the same methodologies. Near London use a similar approach to target other viruses. The same with Sarel Fleischman. It was very successful in developing this nanobodies, the small antibodies against malaria. So he's using the same concept now to try to tackle COVID-19. Whether I'm willing to predict, the timeline.
And if we should invest something.
I think it's will not be very smart for me to give a time window for this. I have to say that developing a small molecule, the process is longer than developing vaccine. But a very important fact is that people need to realize that this research done now worldwide here, but then also in other amazing institutions worldwide and companies will be very relevant also for future pandemics. We all remember the SARS one, the previous one, that was a lot of attention, then it suddenly disappeared and everything went back into the freezers and was pulled down now. So one of the things the Weizmann did during the last few months, because of course our scientists, those 66 labs working now on COVID-19, didn't have special funds to do this research. So we decided to open this coronavirus fund, which was supported by many donors around the world, and we managed to collect to date $12 million for this research. We have a task force within the Weizmann is managing all those projects and allow us to distribute those funds directly to those labs in order to do this research. So part of this will go to a long-term project. So we in the process of establishing an Institute for Infectious Disease, meaning knowing or understanding that the knowledge we are collecting now, or the molecules that we develop, or the vaccines going to be developed, going to be very relevant, or part of them will be relevant also for future pandemics. And this is something that is very, very important to understand.
That sounds amazing. And the fact that you're already thinking long-term and already not just, and I guess that's one of the differences we spoke about at the beginning, where, curiosity or basic research or academic research, as opposed to we need to, do this more of a company. And we got a question. It's actually interesting. You're saying about dealing with this and long-term. Are you already forging cooperations with American research institutes? Johns Hopkins was mentioned here, which is an amazing institution, but not just. Do you already have these networks? Are you forging them now?
Oh, of course. This is, and when I mentioned before that the Weizmann is very international, this is also, of course, very much reflected in our collaboration. And, if you look on the scientific publications coming from the Weizmann Institute, 40% of them, 40, of the publication are shared publication with US partners. So we have ongoing collaborations. We have collaborative programs with many institutions, MIT, University of Michigan, UCLA, and many others. And this is something that we, of course, encourage our scientists. You also have to remember that many of our scientists eventually did their postdoctoral training while in the US, and therefore naturally they created those relationships and then ongoing collaboration. They've shared research grants together, yes, definitely.
I'm glad to hear. And can I from that go a little bit to your personal journey making it? Can you tell us a little bit about what you studied, why you studied it, and a little bit, we're talking about the international students that you're hosting now, or researchers, I'm sorry, mm-hmm. Who are living in times of the pandemic in Israel. And you actually, I think, also have a very, moving a poignant story about your time being a Fulbright Fellow here in the US. So can you tell us a little bit about the program and how, it assisted you and your academic way of looking, and also just a little bit about your story here?
How early to start? You want me to start in university?
You were born in, no, I'm kidding, but a little bit after completing, I think, your bachelor's, and once you've decided that you were going on as a neuroscientist.
It's after completing my PhD here at the Weizmann, I moved to the US, to San Diego, to the Salk Institute in La Jolla, in California. And as you mentioned, I was the recipient of the Fulbright postdoctoral fellowship, also the Rothschild fellowship, but Fulbright was definitely, the combination of the two definitely allowed me to be relatively very flexible with where to go and how to conduct my science. Actually, it was an interesting experience being a Fulbright Fellow. I still remember I don't know if it was a 1 or 2 days training in Tel Aviv, organized by the Fulbright program, how to behave in America. This was the day.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, definitely. And it's actually very interesting because it's very relevant for the COVID, because I still remember the way. Now, Israelis, those of you who know Israelis, are relatively very warm people, very engaging. They're usually, when you talk, the distance is relatively small, and usually touch when you speak. So the training was pretty much, it was a physical training. This is the way you stand in Israel. This is the way you stand in the US. You don't touch, you don't say, you don't comment. But anyway, this was an interesting training. The transition to the US was also, for us, the family, was also quite unusual, because our first day in the US was September 11, was the September 11, September 10, and walked up into September 11. And all of you from the US who experienced this period know that how much US changed the day after. So the first year was not trivial, especially for foreigners. Although Israelis, it was not trivial to get a working permit and all the other regulation, but overall it was a fantastic experience. This is something that I always encourage my students, men or females, just to go and have this experience, even if they do not necessarily want to follow an academic life, to have this experience in doing research abroad. In leading places. This is something that it's extremely important, especially for Israel, which is a small country. We need our students and scientists to go and bring new concepts, new topics, new methodologies, either in US or Canada or in Europe, but leading places. Of course, this is becoming more and more challenging now, and this is something we are, not only us, but all Israel are coping. There are different programs. Many of our graduates now that are supposed to go abroad unfortunately cannot go. Some of them now, the US Embassy started doing interviews now, allowing visas to allowing
Yeah,
those.
we were looking at that as
I,
well.
I,
We're very
I'm,
happy about it.
I'm sure, and this was actually very um, uh, um, allowing many of those students which are currently stuck here to go and start their postdoc, and vice versa. We have outstanding postdocs currently abroad, which are either since the lab they are closed or they cannot run their experiments and want to come back, and they are really worried that they will not be able to gain sufficient amount of data and knowledge and publication in order for them to obtain academic position in Israel. So us and other universities in Israel are doing the adaptation needed in order to allow those fantastic scientists to come back to Israel and still being recruited, and it's very important.
Amazing, and good luck with that continued good work. But I need to ask you another question about your, personal research.
Yeah.
You did a lot of, from what I read, about coping with stress and how stress, brain activity during stress. And you mentioned 9/11, which was obviously a stressful era, not just the days, but the years after. And we're now in another, I think, very stressful new situation that's an ongoing stress situation. One, I don't know if you're doing, or, if you're a full-time admin now, or if you get to do some research about it. Are you making sure, are you following the research that's being done? And what are maybe some of your insights into this and how it's affecting us?
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be the longer answer because now you're reaching into my interest.
I think it's interesting to all of us listening to you.
Yeah. So first, I would say when I moved into the US, the Salk Institute, as I mentioned, this was the first time I started working on stress. And this is what I do in the last almost 20 years now. This is my own personal interest, and my lab research is really studying the brain control on stressful stimuli and stress. And just mentioning the fact that all the management, meaning myself, the president, and all the 4 vice presidents, all of them are scientists, and all of us continue doing science as much as we can. Of course, it's very challenging, but I do have my research group, and we do continue doing research, and specifically now, in the last few months, we even do corona-related research, stress-related research. It's definitely a very challenging period, very stressful. You mentioned September 11, which was a very acute, very traumatic event that, we see the consequences of this on stress-related pathologies, either, post-trauma or anxiety or depression and other pathologies till those days. I could maybe explaining a little bit about the stress or the way we respond to stress and why it's so important is the way we, all organisms actually, respond to any type of stressful stimuli is part of our survival response. If now you're sitting in your beautiful office and a lion will just enter the room, in the minute you perceive the presence of this lion, regardless of the sensory system, you can see it, you can smell it, you can hear it, your brain will activate what is known as the brain stress response. Okay, it will change, it will cause many changes in your brain and your body. And I will describe only some of them. Of course, your heart rate will increase, your blood pressure will go, your blood glucose level, it will go from 100 to 160 or 180, because the brain and the body is preparing you, providing you their energy if you just need now to run and escape. You're going to have changes in your immune system, almost in every peripheral system, but also centrally within the brain. Your level of fear and anxiety will increase, of course. Your cognition, your memory is going to change. Your appetite is going to change. Last thing you need now is to think about your meal. If you have
if I'm going to become one.
Exactly, definitely can be to become one. Your focus attention is going to change. Your almost every major central region in your brain gonna respond to this. And this is a normal, healthy response, okay? And because it's a survival response, and it's taking all your system out of balance, out of what you call homeostasis. But in a minute you realize that what is you're facing is actually not a lion, but is rather Bonnie here in a lion costume. The system, of course, have to switch off and restore homeostasis, bring all the system back to the initial steady state. And this is, and people who cannot control this response, which is an important, healthy response, are the ones who are prone to develop stress-related disorders such as depression and post-trauma and anxiety and eating disorders and many heart-related, immune-related, and so more. But of course, we have to distinguish between a single traumatic event and more chronic. And this is what we're experiencing now. Now, during the corona pandemic,
absolutely.
And it's mainly, of course, the people who are infected are also experiencing these physical symptoms, which are physical stress in a way, because they're infected, the system are activated, they cannot breathe, they have fever, and so on. But the majority are experiencing psychological stress, okay? They have to keep social distancing, we cannot hug anymore, we cannot kiss anymore, we cannot be in close contact, and which is extremely important. We cannot meet our family members, our friends, our routine has been totally changed, we cannot do things that we used to do and cause us to feel good. Many people are losing their jobs, so there's all this economical constraints and pressure and stress. So the amount of stress in general is extremely high during this, and it's becoming chronic because it's quite a long period of time, and it's even changing because now we have first wave and second wave, and the big question is how people are coping. So I can tell you from my colleagues here in Israel and around the world, that the psychiatric hospital are booming, meaning we have so many requests. People are coming with more depression, with more anxiety. There's increase in suicidal ideation and suicide attempt. And I think this would be a much bigger and longer wave, which is going to be the outcome of the current, pandemic, because people are going to carry this outcome for longer period of time. Saying that, I will just mention the fact that the majority, and we see it in the questionnaire we did in Israel, and we have more than 20,000 people, responding to this stress questionnaire. The majority are resilient, like in many other stress events, wars, earthquake, and other mass trauma. The majority of the population are resilient. They are coping well with the situation. But still, we have this fraction of people, either they are genetically predisposed to develop those disorders or are not coping well, either due to former history of stress, and others are the one who are now prone to develop and are developing stress-related disorders. The question what we can do about this, which is also something we are dealing with, how you can cope better. So there are different things that is recommended, and some of them are more scientifically sound, and we have proof that is mechanistically working, such as exercise or activity. This is a scientifically proven method, meaning now you don't need to be an Ironman or run marathons. You just, everyone according to his or her ability, a combination of some aerobic or muscles, just take the stairs when you go up to your office. Bonnie, you don't need to go to the 38th floor in New York, but anything reasonable. This is definitely helpful. Anything, people who do meditation or mindfulness and find it useful. Eventually, anything that let you feel better, that is you feel that it's supportive, is beneficial to you. And there is a long list now. I'm happy to share more.
We're going to ask you to.
And this is ways that, and of course, there's always the professional assistant. The people who used to do therapy should continue doing this. And I know many of my colleagues do it via Zoom. and not even not
Yeah.
always personally. It's not the same, but it's
It's
working.
not. It's not the
It's not.
same.
Some of you, I
Understand.
agree, because the personal yeah, touch and connect is important, but there are different ways. So it's important to continue and cope.
But that's incredible. And yeah, and maybe, yeah, out of this, you'll find long-term, and you've mentioned quite a few disorders or issues, and hopefully, you know, the more research, the quicker we'll find maybe solutions for other stress-related disorders as well. So thank you for that. And okay, it's not, you know, when you mention these disorders, we're not going to talk about it. We're talking about a positive thing at the moment, but many affect, I think, women disproportionately. But sorry to jump from women to women, but Weizmann Institute has a history of, you know, a very good, important women scientists and encouraging women scientists. I think first and foremost, you know, and I got to meet her a couple of times and listen to a lecture on ribosomes that I never really completely understood, is Professor Ada Yonat, the 2009 Nobel Prize winner for chemistry. You know, you had Copaxone as well, by Dr. Routerdon, who was discovered. She led the team that discovered it. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe how many women you have, or from what places in the world you have some women researchers, and maybe, you know, a research that's being done now, led by women, that, you know, will change our lives in the future?
Oh, definitely. First, we have the most amazing women scientists at the Weizmann. I think we're still far from, and you mentioned only two of them, but we have, you know, a very long list of very young and less young women scientists from working in totally different fields, all the way from the biomedical to physics and cancer and immunology. But you know, we look on the percentage of women scientists, and it's not only the problem of the Weizmann, it's a worldwide problem. Is the numbers are still relatively low, meaning I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be 50-50. And if you look now as an average through the faculties, I'm talking about the PI, about the principal investigators, the scientists, not the students and the postdoc, but rather the head of the research groups, we are only in the 20%. So we have faculties like the biomedical one are now 25 or reaching maybe even 30%, while in physics, it's only 6%. And the big question is why, especially since when you look on the PhD students, you can see it's equal. It's 50%, and even in some cases in biology, it's even higher, the percentage of female versus male. And I think it was realized already in very early stages that the bottleneck is the transition toward the postdoc stage, and the fact, especially in Israel, that it's very common to finish your PhD and then go abroad to do your postdoctoral training. And this transition, especially for women scientists which have families, not children, and it's of course more complicated, and they are the ones who decide to look for other alternatives, such as industry, or stay and take other position within Israel. And the Weizmann Institute, I think it had, you know, really a pivotal role in changing this to some degree. And already 15 years ago, the Weizmann established this program, which is a national program. It's a scholarship program for women scientists to allow them to bridge this gap by providing them additional postdoctoral fellowship on top of the one they're already receiving from different agencies. And every year we usually give around 10 or a little bit more fellowship for these women scientists. So we have 15 years, so we have already 150 women scientists who received those grants. And the most amazing fact is that 70 out of them already came back to Israel and got a tenure position in academic institution in Israel. 10 of them within the Weizmann Institute. So, and this program is fully supported by philanthropy. Okay, it's a national program, not only to the Weizmann graduates, but it's open to all Israeli women scientists. It's extremely successful. We definitely need to do more with this. But we plan to continue this and hopefully get more support for this program from more donors. I would like to link this, your question now about the gender and your previous question about stress, because this is something which is also very relevant to this period, because women in general respond very differently to stressful challenges than men. I will not go into the biology and explain why, and the cortisol levels are higher and so on. But more importantly, you can see it in the pathologies, meaning the prevalence of depression or anxiety, for example, which are very stress-induced pathology, are 2 to 3 times higher in women than in men. Okay, so we also need to take into account the fact that women are probably more vulnerable than men during this stressful period. Okay, and this is something which also need to take into account and see how we can help and cope. We definitely would like to provide, we have a new program now for women scientists that have no way or no possibility to go abroad, despite this program and despite they are excellent from different personal reasons. And we have this program now that allow them to do a shared postdoc with Israeli lab, the Weizmann lab, sorry, and a lab abroad, that they only required to go a few times and visit the foreign lab, but they will work here locally. We'll give them the lab space within other research groups within the Weizmann. They will have their own topic, their own niche of research, but they will still have this relationship with the group abroad. We just started this 2 years ago, a very limited number of talented women scientists, and this is something that with the current atmosphere probably will have more demand than usual.
That is amazing. The fact that you notice this, you're taking care of it, and you're doing both local for Weizmann Institute initiatives, but national initiatives, and now getting other institutes abroad involved. I think it definitely sort of maybe a bit like in the pandemic. Once you work together in the different circles, you start at home and then grow. These things have a chance of succeeding and being more successful. But I asked you a question, but I think we have one last time for a last question. But
yeah, I see the question running on the right. I'm trying to capture, but it's really,
there's so
really
many of them, by the way.
Yeah.
There are so many, and but I asked you to give us an example, but now it doesn't have to be a lab headed by a woman, because I don't what. Give us one, super interesting, as I said, life-changing or interesting for us something that Weizmann Institute or a laboratory in Weizmann Institute is working on at the moment, not pandemic, because you gave us, Professor Segas and Professor Raskin, but something not pandemic, something for our lives in the future.
Yeah, there's so many, so it will be hard to.
You can give us two.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want anyone at the Weizmann to be upset that I chose something, but we have several very big and interesting flagship projects currently developing, and so maybe I will choose one project, and which is already started, and it's called Ultrasound. It's actually project of our team of scientists from the astrophysicists, and we're doing something that is relatively very unique for academic institution, definitely in Israel. We are currently building a satellite on campus, and this is a very, very unique satellite. But unlike the other satellite, which actually look down to Earth, this satellite is going to look up to the universe, and it's going to capture those supernovas, those blasts of stars that no one really captured live to date. And this is currently a project which is already started. It's in collaboration with the European Space Agency, the Israel Space Agency, the Helmholtz Institute in Germany, and many, many supporters, both from philanthropy and government. And NASA agreed to launch this for us. We have a deadline for 4 years. It's extremely exciting. Those blasts are the source for all the materials in nature. Okay, and we definitely can gain a lot of knowledge by being, successful with this program. How exciting was, the program to the Bereshit, the try to put,
Absolutely.
to land on the moon. So, but scientifically, if you take, the potential, the knowledge we're going to gain from such a project called Ultrasat, is a different order of magnitude in the importance for science. So this is just one project of many, the Faculty of Physics. But I invite you all just to go into our website. There's a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Approach directly our scientists. You will find out they're extremely communicative and like to share their knowledge and their findings. Yeah, that's all.
That we're super excited. As you said, we love Bereshit. We follow space research here. We're so close to NASA all the time. We're definitely going to follow this. And yeah, I've never heard of an upside down, you're right, satellite. Yeah. Also, we have right inside our bodies, we have some star or universe particles. So it's going to be really, really interesting. And we'll remind you about it.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Professor Alon Chen, for your time and for your wonderful, beautiful insights into, the pandemic we're all suffering from now all over the world. And we have our fingers crossed for Weizmann Institute for its different projects, but especially for, dealing, whether you said it's not a vaccine, but dealing with this specific pandemic with the molecules and more. And and we'll be in touch and we'll try to answer. There are many questions we didn't get to. We'll try to answer the people via mail, and this will stay on our Facebook page. And please do go into the Weizmann Institute of Science site, learn more about it. Extremely interesting, and so wonderful to learn about these innovations. So thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm sorry we don't have time to answer the question, but again, be happy to get them following the broadcast, and I'll try to send an answer later. And please, you're all welcome to visit campus, those of you who didn't visit yet, and please stay in touch. Thank you very much, Tami, for fantastic questions, and for organizing this, and also for our Aquis, our friends in the US and Canada and Mexico and everyone. Thank you very much. Stay well and safe, and all the best.
Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you all.